you had 50 ballots of each, 50 yes and 50 no. You pull out one yes ballot, and you still have 50 yes ballot, but one less no ballot. Now that wasn't done just once. That was done about 10 times. Well, welcome. This is an explanation of just why I, as a representation of high government, challenged and petitioned for a recount in this Racine Unified School District referendum. And I'd like to just start off by saying this is not just about recounting ballots. If it was about that, it would have been real simple and probably would have ended with the same result. But this is more about how did the ballot count get changed and what changes those counts. And it is on that basis that I'm really glad that we petitioned for a recount. Another problem that we are complaining about is that this whole process is designed around the Racine Unified School District employees controlling the ball field, in other words. The three Board of Canvassers that are making the final decision are all administrators at Racine Unified School District. Most of the tabulators are school teachers. And during this whole time, we have to stay away 6 feet from the table. We can't look close. We can't really see what they're doing as they're going through envelopes or counting or anything. All we can do is stand way, way back. And yet at the same time, their lawyer, not a canvasser, and he's not a tabulator. He shouldn't be touching those ballots either. And my question is why am I not allowed to just take these envelopes, and you can have a person, a tabulator right there, and give me a chance to look at them at my own speed and investigate both sides. But why am I not allowed to do that? What are they afraid I'm going to do? Going to stick one on my shirt or change one or steal one or something like that? They obviously don't trust me to touch them at all. But I'm supposed to trust them as school teachers, handling the ballots for an election in which they stand to lose $1 billion. I just don't think that was fair at all. I think when the rules and regulations, if they're going to stick to them, they should stick to them. And when they have some of their own staff who is not a tabulator and not a canvasser, like their lawyer and like some of the other staff supporters, they call them, going in and handling these election materials, we just think that was also unfair, and part of our complaint is with regards to that also. The first thing we want to look at is absentee ballots, because that is what caused the most problems, and that is what the whole recount and a lot of the arguing is about, absentee ballots. And just for a reminder, I'm going to go through the process of what an absentee ballot is and how it gets cast. First of all, you have a ballot. Now, it's bigger than this and it's got markings on it, but I'm going to use this as a demonstration. And what you do is the voter goes down and votes on the ballot. Then the voter takes the ballot, folds it up, and puts it into a special envelope. This is a special envelope because on the outside of this ballot, 3 things have to happen at least. First is the person that voted has to sign it, like that. All right, then there has to be someone else, a witness, that observed this balloting, so you give it over to the witness, and the witness has to sign it and also put his address down. Those 3 things have to be on the ballot. Also, often there's a place to date the ballot, the time that this voter actually signed it. Now, the next thing that has to happen is this ballot has to be gotten into the mail and postmarked by April 7th. That was the date of the election. The other thing that has to happen is the post office has to get it to the clerk by April 13th. In order for it to count. If the post office loses it for a week or it doesn't get there by the 13th, then it doesn't count. And that was why many of you noticed we all voted on the 7th, and then we had to wait to the 13th till we actually counted the votes and got the results of the election. Okay, this segment then is on what the clerk does when he or she receives the ballot. So here's this ballot in the mail. And the first thing the clerk will do is going to look at and make sure those three things are there. This signature and the witness signature and the witness address. Then the clerk will turn it over and make sure that it was postmarked by the 7th. And of course the clerk's going to look at their watch and make sure that it's the right date, or the calendar, whatever they look at to find the day, and make sure that it's still the 13th. Now, if all that is good, then what the clerk will do is they'll get a letter opener out, and they open up the envelope, and they cast the ballot. Okay? Now, that won't necessarily happen when they first receive it, but it happens at least by the 13th. I don't know exactly what their process was, but they may have just set it aside and then open it on the 13th. And so that ballot gets cast. Now, suppose they look at this envelope, though, and they say, oh my goodness, there's something wrong here. The voter did not sign the ballot. That's not good. Well, if it was before or by April 7th, they have another folder dated April 7th, and they put that envelope into that folder. And that never gets opened. It's in there with the ballot, and it just sits there. It's not going to get counted. If the ballot comes in after the 7th, in other words, the election's already taken place, and the ballot comes in, and the clerk sees, oh, there's something wrong with it. It could be there's no signature, or it could be not even postmarked by the 7th. There's still something wrong with it. Then they have another folder that they put it into, and that is for those ballots that the clerk had rejected by the 13th. Now, those that come in after the 13th, by that the election's counted and everything's gone. I don't know what to do with those ballots. Those were never considered. But these two envelopes are important, and also there is a stack of envelopes that the clerk opened up and took the ballots out of and cast them. Those are the three particular types of things that we're interested in and will get looked at during the recount. All right, so now we're at the recount. And there are two categories of people in this that need to be defined. Their jobs need to be defined and need to understand it in order to understand our petition and some of the things we're complaining about. The first one is called a canvasser. This is the person that will look at the ballot, actually take it out and look at it, all right, and make a decision of whether it's correct or not. They will also look at these cast envelopes, the envelopes that don't have a ballot in, and make a decision. The other person is what's called a tabulator, and this is the person that just counts. Now, it's real important to distinguish these two, and it's cited in our complaint what the law is, and I'm going to read that to you now, and here's the way it goes. Tabulators may assist the Board of Canvassers in conducting the recount, but only the Board of Canvassers are competent to make any determination as to the validity of any vote tabulated. That's real important. So the only person that can make a decision of whether to count a vote or not is the Board of Canvassers, not the tabulators. The tabulators are just there to count. Now, the first thing will happen is these big envelopes that contain the ballots that were rejected by the clerks, they will immediately go to the Board of Canvassers, and each one of those envelopes will be taken out of here, and they will be looked at, and they will be decided. It will be decided by the Board of Canvassers whether or not that ballot should have been rejected. And if the thing was all right, if it was the rejection was okay, then it just goes back in the envelope and goes back over into a plastic bag. The next thing they look at is those ballots that came in after the 7th, and they'll pull out those envelopes, and they'll look at them and look over the envelopes and make sure the clerk had it right. And then if the clerk had it right, then it just goes back in the envelope and goes back to the where they're counting, and just goes back in the plastic bag. But once in a while, they'll pull out, and this happened, they'll pull out a ballot and it looks good. All the signatures are there, and the address of the witness is there. They'll check the ballot. It was cast by April 7th, and the clerk obviously received it by the 13th. So that should have gotten counted. So what they will do in that case is they'll open up that envelope. They'll pull out the ballot, and they take it back to the table and say, count that. Now there's one way that the count gets changed. In other words, it wasn't a matter of counting 50 votes and then over at the election day and then coming over here and counting 50 votes again. That was not a problem. I didn't detect any changes in that. When the tabulators first get the ballots and they get the record of the people that voted, they check them out, and everything agreed at the start with how the election came out on April 7th. But one of these new ballots gets added in because the clerk had denied a vote that the Board of Canvassers felt should be counted. Now we add one vote into the total, and that's one way it gets changed. So there you saw how a vote gets added. Now we're going to look how a vote gets subtracted. It's also called a drawdown. And if you're following this case at all or reading about the newspaper, you have to hear that word drawdown. So I'm going to talk a little bit about and explain how a drawdown comes about. First of all, what happens is the tabulators look at all the empty envelopes. Imagine this is a stack of empty envelopes. Remember, the clerk opened up that ballot, decided the ballot was good by looking at the envelope, opened it up, cast the ballot, and then they saved the envelope. Not in these envelopes. This one just got saved in a stack of envelopes of ballots that were used. So then the tabulators, if they look and challenge one of those, then it goes over to the Board of Canvassers. And let's say the Board of Canvassers says, they look at this ballot and say, wow, man, this ballot doesn't even have a voter signature, but it got used. So now we have a problem. Let's suppose this is a stack of, just pretend this is a stack of votes, all right? I think you out there got a good enough imagination to do that. This is a stack of ballots. And we got 100 ballots in this stack, and we find out that one of them is not good. Now when that clerk took that ballot out of that envelope, she didn't mark it in any way. She might have looked at it, by the way, if you're worried about a secret ballot. It's a little bit changed there, a little bit marginalized. But anyway, let's not worry about that. Right now, the point is the clerk took that ballot out, put it in the stack of ballots to be used. It's here now, and there's no way for her to find that particular ballot, is there? Because it's totally separated from that envelope. So what we do is we call it drawdown. They take all the ballots, the yes and no ballots, and it's only, by the way, it's only the absentee ballots. They don't include the ballots that were cast by people that went to the polls personally. And then they send one of the tabulators over there, and the tabulator kind of closes her eyes, so to speak, and she reaches in there and pulls out a ballot, one at random. And so now, instead of 100 ballots in this pile, we only have 99 ballots, which was what we need, and that's the way the law says you take care of that extra ballot. And that's called a drawdown. Okay, now I'm going to take my two pretend stacks of ballots here now, and we're going to divide them into 50 no ballots here and 50 yes ballots here. And the Board of Canvassers decide that there is a ballot in there that should not have been counted. So what they do is they take these and they shuffle them up. All right, and some of them, those canvassers are pretty good. They took these big stacks of cards and they actually shuffled them like a deck of cards. Others just spread it on the table and tried to mix them up as best they can. But then they came up with a stack of ballots that was all mixed up now. All the yes and no ballots are mixed up. And of course now the Board of Canvassers, someone from the Board of Canvassers comes over and pulls one out, just like I said. And let's say that this was a yes ballot, because this is what was actually happening. This is a yes ballot. Now what that means is that there's this went from 100 ballots down to 99 ballots. And then when the tabulators go out and separate them out again into yes and no ballots, how many ballots should be in the no pile? Well, it should still be 50, right? Because they pulled out one yes ballot. And how many ballots should be in the yes ballot, the yes pile? It should now be 49 ballots. Does that make sense? And the problem is that is not sufficient. According to the law, the Board of Canvassers cannot simply subtract the drawn down votes from the original total. They can't just say, okay, we got a new total. We have 50 no ballots and 49 yes ballots because we pulled out one yes ballot. Can't do that. You have to recount them. So they go through and recount them, and what do you know? There's 50 yes ballots and only 49 no ballots. Now our question is, how the heck can that happen? You had 50 ballots of each, 50 yes and 50 no. You pull out one yes ballot, and you still have 50 yes ballot, but one less no ballot. Now that wasn't done just once. That was done about 10 times. And the result is when you do that, when you get the ballot mixed up, it's equal to 2 votes. You see that? It's a 2-vote mistake. In other words, it should have been 100 no votes and 50 no votes and 49 yes votes, but instead it's 50 yes votes and 49 no votes. That's a 2-vote mistake. So when they do that 10 times, it came out by our tally to a count of 21 different, a vote count of 21 difference where the no votes would gain. So instead of losing now by 5 votes, we're ahead by 16. Well, that is one of our challenges. And the simple thing that we want to do, and we feel we have the right to do, is to look at those 10 wards, those 10 voting precincts, find out how did they do it. How could they subtract a yes vote and yet it stays the same and goes one less no vote? And we feel we have a right to do that. And that is what we're complaining about. The newspaper quotes one of the lawyers for the Unified School District is saying we're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hope something sticks. Well, I hope you can see now it's a little bit more than spaghetti that we're talking about. That's one of the main issues that we have. All right, we're going to take a little segment here on probabilities. I have 2 decks of cards here, okay, regular 52 deck of cards. But in this deck, I've taken out all the diamonds. So what's left in there is clubs, spades, and hearts. All right? This deck over here, I've taken all the spades out. So over here is clubs, diamonds, and hearts. Now here's the game. You want to draw out a black card. And just for kicks, I'll throw in and give you $5 if you can draw out a black card. Now my question is, which deck do you want to use? You can draw out of either deck, it's your choice. You want to take the deck where I took the diamonds out, and it's the clubs, spades, and hearts, or do you want to use the deck where I took the spades out, which is hearts, diamonds, and clubs? Well, I hope you picked this deck, because this deck has more black cards in it, and your chances of drawing a black card out is a lot better than trying to draw out of this deck. Now, keep that in mind, because it's an important concept when you get up to what the tabulators might be doing. Now, the next thing we have contention with is the actions and the activities of the tabulators. The tabulators, again, are just there to count. They really are not there to make any decisions with regards to the validity of any ballot. And earlier in this video, I read you a part of the law. I'm going to reread it again here just because we're looking at this again. Tabulators may assist the Board of Canvassers in conducting the recount, but only the Board of Canvassers are competent to make any determination as to the validity of any vote. Now, you remember this stack of envelopes that the clerks had set aside. There were empty envelopes. They'd already been cast. The ballots had already been taken out and cast. And the tabulators, sorry about that, the tabulators are looking at each one of these empty envelopes. And what are they looking at? They're looking at the validity of it. They're looking to say, is the postmark okay? Is the voter signature okay? There's a witness there. Is that all right? And they make a decision, yes or no. And if they decide, yes, it's okay, then it stays. You count that ballot. If they look at it and say, no, it's not okay, then it goes up to the Board of Canvassers. If they decide it's not okay, they cannot make the final decision to do a drawdown. But they send it up to the Board of Canvassers. If the Board of Canvassers agreed and says that should not have been cast, then it comes back and they do that drawdown. Now, most of these tabulators, we have researched them, and they are Racine Unified School District employees. A lot of them are school teachers. And it's funny that when it came to challenging them, these ballots, and I got a chart here, the challenges in what we call the suburbs, this is Caledonia, Mount Pleasant, Wind Point, Sturtevant, much higher than over in Racine. It gets pretty darn sparse. And when they go into this recount, they're told when they start their recount what the tally was. Were they mostly yes votes or were mostly no votes? They know exactly what the count was. And they also understand this concept that I showed you with the cards. If we challenge a vote in the suburbs, there's a lot more no votes in there than there are yes votes. If we challenge one in Racine, a lot more yes votes than there are no votes. So if we want to pick a card out of one of those decks, okay, we want to pick out the one with the most no votes. And that's these right along here. And it's amazing how good Racine was in filling out their ballots compared to people in the suburbs. We question it. And we had asked during the recount, we wanted to look at the Racine envelopes. We didn't feel like they'd been properly looked at, and we were told we could. And we got extra people. I got extra people, and there were two other petitioners with me from the Taxpayers Association. I was with Hot Government, with Taxpayers Association, Libertarian Party, and we were told that on Friday they were going to redo all those, look at all those envelopes. And so I got extra people in there. And we were going to look at the envelopes. And when we got there, guess what? Envelopes were already looked at. Another challenge that we have to the procedures is that we were not allowed to look at the envelopes and some of the ballots that we wanted to. So those are our two main contentions. There's some other smaller ones that I'm not going to get into right now. But this challenge is legitimate. By our recount and the tabulation of those errors, those crazy errors that they made when they were pulling out ballots and the wrong people, the totals came out wrong. And we feel that we have actually, the no's have actually prevailed, and the courts should reverse that decision on the outcome of this referendum. Thank you.